I've told you folks on this show to stop booking beautiful women. Last night Cheryl Tiegs was on. We had Maria Conchita Alonso from Kiss of the Spider Woman, and now you've really done it. This lady debuted in an Oscar-winning film, Ordinary People, then got her own nomination for Ragtime. She's here from London, where she lives now, with two firsts. She has a child and a role in the first dramatic IMAX 3D film. So we'll be talking tonight with Elizabeth McGovern. Then later on, they're swindlers, sex addicts, thieves, exhibitionists, and embezzlers. No, they're not guests on the Sally Jesse Raphael show. He says they're presidents of the United States. Now, I think he's a little rough on them, but that's what the author says. He wrote a book called Inside the White House. That's coming up straight up on Straightforward. Talent, beauty, brains, a new daughter, and a starring role in the first dramatic IMAX 3D film, Wings of Courage. You add that up and you wonder, why is this woman sitting here with Roger Ailes on this show? Doesn't she have anything better to do? Elizabeth, well, welcome to the show.
Thy you. It's nice
Why are you here? This IMAX film?
Yes.
Tell me about it.
Well, tonight
What's
is the
IMAX
gala.
mean, by the way?
IMAX is a huge screen.
So it's like, is it like curved or is it just big?
Yes, and it surrounds half the audience.
Okay.
So you really feel you're right inside of whatever it is you're seeing. But this is different from IMAX because this is not only IMAX, it's 3-dimension.
Which means if somebody throws a punch, you feel like you're getting hit in the audience, right?
You feel like you're right there. And you're handed, as you walk in, a sophisticated version of the old 3D glasses.
Yeah, when I was a kid, this is a long time ago, the 50s, they had these 3D movies, and they had guys throwing things at the screen, and you'd think you were going to get hit in the audience.
Yeah.
Did you go see it in 3D? I mean,
I've only seen some of the rushes, and I'll go see the whole thing pieced together tonight. So
where is it? Where is it?
Sony has built on 68th and Broadway a big IMAX theater. The idea being that there's a possibility this may be the new way people watch movies, and that there may come a day when we look at 2-dimensional movies the way we look at movies without sound today, as some crude old way of entertaining ourselves.
That's very interesting, because they thought that back in the 50s, but now we're in the 90s. They're back trying to sell this again.
Yeah.
Do you think there's something bizarre about putting glasses on when you go into the theater, though?
Well, that's the experiment.
I mean, that was always hard for me.
I know. We'll see.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, when sound first came out in movies, everybody said something weird about sounds. It's, you know,
yeah, you don't want to hear people to actually talk, and then they got over it. Yeah.
And then you kind of get used to it, and you invent a whole new language, and the audience understands that, and you go on from there.
What does your husband do? I know he's in the film business. Is he?
He's a producer and a director. He comes out of English theatre, and he's producing a series for the BBC of one-off plays.
Oh, okay. So he's a theatrical director.
Yeah.
Because I wondered, because a lot of directors, I didn't want to insult him, but I mean, a lot of guys who do this 3D stuff then try to find a lot of things to throw at the audience so that they can keep it exciting.
Yes, no, the attempt has been not to make a movie that goes for the shtick, but rather goes for the emotional story and have the audience actually become involved with the characters. So that's been the challenge, and whether or not we've succeeded is...
Well, like if, I know guys who have an aversion to women crying. For instance, crying in 3D. Is there anything different if I see it? Do I feel like she's crying on me, or can I like move back 2 seats, or how do you?
Well, what you
do I feel like I need to comfort her?
It's different because the camera can't go up into a face. You can't get close because if you can picture a huge screen and you picture a 3-dimensional person on that screen, if the camera moved in, it would be overwhelming and it would be a distortion.
Yeah,
so what we're talking about is
30 feet across, or 50
right.
feet.
You'd see every pore.
Yeah,
you'd
it'd be really disgusting.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is a whole new film language, because the way film is developed is D.W. Griffith and all the greats came up with cutting to tell a story. You go in for the close-up, you go in for the shot of the coffee cup as it's being sipped, and that's the way you shift the audience's focus to convey whatever it is you want to convey.
D.W. Griffith did a great film called Birth of a Nation, which was,
yeah,
for
he
those
was one
you,
of the
film noir.
The real innovators.
He was an innovator.
Right.
Although the political correct crowd now won't let you show the film because there were things in it that they say were...
I guess he was a conservative.
Well, I'm not sure if he was conservative. I think he was
I
just
don't know.
telling the story of the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, times change and people get trapped in their time period, in a
Yeah.
sense. Well, you know that. You did Ragtime. I mean, that's an interesting... Did you have to study any history to do Ragtime?
Well, I think the Ragtime was trying to get a feeling for a time period without being historically completely accurate in any way.
You did a nude scene in that film, as I recall, and you looked like you were about 14 at the time. But you weren't.
I wasn't very old.
You were in your teens.
Yeah.
Did that bother you, or your parents are pretty straight-laced folks, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, they're like, one's a teacher and the other's...
Yeah.
Didn't they get uptight about that, or did you
Actually,
tell them not
they
to see that
didn't.
film?
No. My mother is famous for saying it's the least sexy nude scene she's ever seen in her life, so she felt okay about it.
Actually, it was not. It was not a any kind of obscene scene at all. It was kind of an innocent scene.
The idea of it was that there was this girl who was so innocent that she would do this business transaction without her clothes on. I mean, that was supposed to be funny. That was.
Actually, it was sort of charming.
Yeah.
Although some people missed the point because they were.
Well, I know, but I mean, what I hadn't predicted was that people are so distracted by that, and it makes it.
Part of the problem with that was the same problem that Brooke Shields had when she did the scene very young, as a young teenager, where she was working as a prostitute or something, and the problem was, and the shocking part of it was, that you appeared so young. I don't know how young you were, but you appeared to be almost 15 years old, and I think Brooke was 11 or something.
Yeah.
That's the shock, I think, to people's system. But other than that, it was a very perfectly fine scene. Do you do nude scenes today, or are they? Would you do it if it's supposedly in the script and part of the script, or do you now say the heck with that, I'm not interested?
I don't have any hard and fast rules. I don't feel as happy parading around without my clothes on as I did when I was 18.
Right.
But I don't, as I say. I mean, for me, what's important is the character and the story. But I'm a lot less naive now than I was when I did Ragtime. I mean, I didn't have any idea that I didn't have any experience of the kind of impact that a film has on an audience. You know, I mean, I just didn't have a personal...
Did that have any impact on your personal life, having done that scene or done that film like that?
It's hard to say because it was a time, like for everybody, their late teens, early 20s is a time of enormous change and confusion, and it was for me. And it's hard for me to compare my experience to anyone else's. But sure, you know.
Yeah. I'm a fine actor as well, but I've never been asked to do a nude scene. I would do one. I have no problem, but they never, for some reason, never have asked that. How does it feel to be a mom now?
I just love it.
Do you?
I know it's the cliche, banal thing to say, but I just love it.
Is your kid the cutest kid in the world?
It's my kid. I know everyone says this, but she is the cutest thing in the world.
That's great.
Yeah.
You took some time off from film because of the child too, right?
Yeah.
I'm a great believer in that. I mean, I think that there's a period of time from birth, they say till the first 4 years, where the character of a child is formed. And in that period of time, they need almost constant support. If they don't get it, they turn into little mini sociopaths and go on and
I don't know.
become 9-year-old people. And then they grow up to be like Matt here, our floor manager, who you have
well,
to...
that's
it's
the
very
explanation.
disciplined. That's right. But no, I think that early time with the child is very important.
Well, once you've had a child, you do see that you see all the stuff going into that forming brain, and you're very aware of the responsibility that you have.
Are you going to raise your child any differently than you were raised?
That's a good question. I think times have changed, so in that sense, not that it's my choice, but it will be, it's a different world my child is growing up in. And at times it's tough for me because my parents had what was typical for them, but a more traditional kind of marriage where my mother was at home with the kids all the time they were growing up. And even though I have been home with her quite a bit, I still have a career. So in a way, it's at times it causes me some anxiety because I thought my mother was the best mother in the world, and I want to be, but
but you are going to work at some point.
Yeah,
you have to
exactly.
work, right? I'm going to have to take a break here. We're here with very talented actress Elizabeth McGovern, and we'll be right back after these messages.
You know, Evelyn, Mrs. Thaw is a very generous woman.
Oh, that's another laugh.
You don't really want to see your husband electrocuted, do you?
I guess not. He is crazy, though, you know.
Mrs. Thaw is prepared to offer you a substantial sum of money if you will cooperate fully with us.
Wow, what do you think when you see that?
Oh my God.
Tell me what you think. What went through your head? You were staring at that. What was going through your mind?
Oh my God. I was just like looking at a picture of yourself, I suppose. Was I that young?
The acting was pretty good, though, for
Yeah?
very young. Yeah, that takes
you.
were very subtle. The blinking of the
Yeah,
eye on
right.
that was a very, very impressive move for an 18-year-old. Who discovered you? Did you get discovered, or did you just kind of go out and try out one day and get a part?
It's an amazing story, now I realize. But I was in a play in high school, Skin of Our Teeth, and an agent came to see it. And it was right at the time I was graduating from high school and set to go to college. And she had expressed some interest, so I said, will you send me on some summer work, and then I can help to earn money for the next year at college. And she did. And one of the auditions was The Ordinary People, because Redford was seeing kids all over LA at that time. So
What were your impressions of Redford when you first met him? Do you have any?
Well, obviously, he, you know, was the icon that he is. And so I was pretty flabbergasted just to be in the same room with him. And now I have more perspective on what a great director he is, and how lucky I was the first time out to be with such a sure-handed, clear visionary.
I always liked Redford as an actor, but I really think he's a director.
He's a
I think
brilliant director.
I think he's a really good director, and I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think many directors try to control talent. I don't get the sense that he does that. Having been an actor, he understands what he wants and he sees it, and he doesn't seem to be as much of a control freak about it.
I don't know what the secret is, but he consistently gets everybody's best performance of their career out of them.
Right.
It's
no, that's a
phenomenal.
real talent in and of itself. Just getting the performance. I mean, there are good directors who are good technical directors. I mean, they really make pretty pictures, but some reasons the talent doesn't quite live up to it, or doesn't quite make it, or there's something, you know. But he seems to do quite well there.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with anything he thinks politically, but I think he happens to be a brilliant director too. He is good. What is your opinion of Hollywood as we know it? I mean, if you were a young mom from the Midwest with a teenage daughter who said, I'm going to Hollywood to make it in the movies, what would you warn her about? What would you tell her about Hollywood?
Well, it is what it is. I think the trick to it is to temper your expectation so that you're not living in a state of bitterness or disappointment. I mean, at the bottom line is it's a business, and it's about numbers, and what is so exciting is that there is the potential there to shape people's minds and their lives, and to truly give them something. And it's always been my hope to be part of projects that do that. And
but you wouldn't warn her that this is sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and be very careful, kid?
I suppose yes, I would. I have to say though that my experience of Hollywood isn't been sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I mean, there was this show that everybody was watching in England called Hollywood Kids, and all the kids were shooting up, and they looked like they were about 50, and I thought, my God, I mean that hasn't been my experience. I think that I was very fortunate because I have always had a family behind me that has kept my head on my shoulders.
Does that mean you didn't ever feel you had to make it because it was the only thing you had about yourself?
Exactly. It's been a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because I've always seen success in Hollywood with a certain perspective. I mean, my parents, you know, couldn't care less. They really couldn't. Yeah. And it's possible that if I had that kind of burning drive all the time, that I'd be more successful than I am. But on the other hand, I feel very lucky because I feel that I've lived a fairly balanced life, and so I'm grateful for that.
Did you have a time when you had it tough in your career? You're awfully young to have gone through any tough times, but was there ever a time that you either dropped out voluntarily or involuntarily, you couldn't get a part, or you were having trouble, you felt your career was off track, and why was that?
Well, I think the interesting thing about working in Hollywood is that there's, to a certain extent, somebody always feels that way. I mean, that's the misperception, is that people look at big stars and they think, oh, they must be so full of themselves. But almost everyone I've ever met has not gotten that part that they really wanted, and that is what is obsessing them. And no matter where you are, you always could be more successful, or you always could be the more hot and more in demand. I forgot the question.
It's the Sudafed. She told me she just took she's got a little cold, so that's it. No. I meant, you know, if you don't seem to have that drive, we have to take a break. Yeah. We're going to come back and talk more about the drive to be a star with Elizabeth McGovern. More tips from her on what to do if you want to be a Hollywood star. Stay with us. Is that another Elizabeth McGovern that we don't know? When you see yourself there, as opposed to you, Mom, headed to California to see the folks, is there another person over there?
Do you mean in the work?
Yeah. I mean, in other words, when you look at yourself, it's almost like looking at another person rather than who you are day to day? Yes.
I think you learn to separate yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's much easier.
You said it doesn't bring happiness in the break we were talking about. What do you mean?
Well, I suppose if you look to Hollywood, in my experience, for your sense of self-esteem, you'll never get it.
Really?
No, it's just not. It's not going to happen. It has to come from other places, and it's a great business. I love it. I mean, I really think it's fascinating, and there's great people in it, and there's a lot of potential for good. But it won't make you happy.
Who did you grow up idolizing in the movies? Who did you, when you went to the movies, who did you look up on the screen and say, oh my God?
The truth is, I wasn't a kid who saw a lot of movies.
Really?
It wasn't part of my family's culture. My father never went to the movies. He saw Charlie Chaplin, and that was it. To this day.
Really?
Yeah. I have a lot of icons now, but I didn't growing up.
Who do you like now? Whose work do you really like? What actor would you like to work with that you haven't worked with?
There's a lot of women actresses I admire. Meryl Streep is somebody that I think for a lot of people is a real icon and always will be, because she combined a sense of craft, glamour, beauty, a lot of integrity and intelligence, and she just did all those things, and then she had 4 kids, and I mean, just unbelievable.
How many kids are you going to have?
I don't know.
Huh?
I don't know.
Have you thought about it?
I'm going to take one at a time.
Come on, you talk to your husband about it. What are you going to say?
I think what we have decided is that we want another kid, but we want to wait. We don't want one right away, partly because we do so much of this going back and forth between England and America that it's an added complication.
You seem very centered for a person in show business. Not that they're all wacky. They get a bad rap. Many of them are pretty centered, but you're very centered. Do you attribute that to your parents, or were you just lucky, or what? Why is that? You don't seem to be a kid who got in a lot of trouble.
I have great parents. I really do. I give them credit.
Really?
Yeah.
Was your dad strict?
No, I feel that my parents learned as they went along, which is as much as I ask of anybody. I mean, so that I really do, thinking back, feel as though they learned from, there's 3 of us in the family, from us, and they kind of adjusted their style as we went according to what they felt our needs were at that time, and actually they've produced 3 really interesting people.
What's that gene in a person that says you want to be a performer, an actor, an exhibitionist? In other words, you want to be seen, you want to be appreciated beyond just your family. You want applause, you need that.
Yeah.
What is that gene? What is that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think for me, it's an excuse to be a bit crazy, to be honest with you,
Really?
because I find it hard in life to get
out.
angry and act out. Exactly, and so that psychologically, there's this way I can do it that's very safe, and I feel very lucky.
Do you ever get angry in real life and just throw things and go?
Not very often.
Really? But it's easier in a character, isn't
It's
it?
much easier.
Do you feel better when you go home and say, well, I got that off my chest, now I can go be normal?
Yeah, you kind of do.
Huh?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
Do you have an ambition to do anything beyond acting? Would you ever want to direct, or are you pretty comfortable being an actress?
I feel that in my heart and soul, I'm an actress.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I did, but I actually don't. The kind of
Your husband's listening to this, and he's quite happy that you don't have any interest in his job.
Yeah, probably. Just the sort of the day-to-day detail of being a director doesn't suit me psychologically.
Mm-hmm. Tell me one more time about IMAX. This opens tonight here in Manhattan, right? The IMAX thing. What's it called? Wings?
It's called Wings of Courage.
Wings of Courage, and it's a 40-minute movie. It's not a long movie.
Yeah.
Is that to test the system, in a sense?
Yes, it's very expensive to make. The jury is still out. We don't know whether audiences are going to be able to sit with these glasses on and this paraphernalia for any longer. The hope is they will. The hope is once they get used to it, they'll
love it. And
yeah, they won't like the other. But it remains to be seen.
Well, it's a big experiment, and I wish you the best with it. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Okay, good luck going to California. I hope the Sudafed doesn't put you to sleep this afternoon. Elizabeth McGovern, thanks for joining us. And coming up next, a look inside the White House you will not believe.